Gamebreaker TV.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Monty's Minute right here on Gamebreaker.tv, the video game business show where you've got answers, you've got questions. You don't have answers. That's why you're asking questions. You've got questions. He's got answers. This episode of Monty's Minute is brought to you by Netflix. Go over to netflix.com/GamebreakerTV. Sign up for their free 30-day trial today. That is netflix.com/Gamebreaker today. Gamebreaker TV. I can't talk today. I'll just keep rattling on and on and on. What's up? It's Mr. Monty Sharma back for another week of episode number 3. How are you, sir?
I am fabulous. How you doing, Gary?
Amazing. Great list of questions we've been getting in. Keep your questions rolling in. You can send your questions to Monty at Gamebreaker.tv or send them to his Twitter account if you want. I'll try and keep an eye on that, but I'd say the email is best. But his Twitter is Monster, MONTSTER27. And first up this week, we've got a question from Kurt Sharma. Would this be any relation to Monty Sharma?
It would actually be my nephew.
Okay, so your nephew's got he's looking for some advice.
That's it, yeah.
Kurt says, he wants to know, he says, how many console generations does the industry have left in it? Many game companies are delivering excellent games for mobile devices and computers that are approaching or at or beyond the quality of AAA console games. What do you think?
Yeah, it's actually a really good question. I think there's two parts to the equation there. One part's the distribution, the other part's the hardware. So let's talk about distribution first. Everybody in the packaged software business, so guys who sell games in boxes, hate GameStop. Why do they hate GameStop? Well, GameStop asks them for a whole bunch of money to promote a game, to hang things from the ceiling. They want exclusives. You want to be on the end cap. You want to be featured this long. You're paying GameStop a whole bunch of money for it. Well, as soon as the game goes on sale, the next day GameStop is repackaging used software. So the game companies say, hey, we're losing money here. GameStop says, hey, lots of people are playing your games. And that battle continues. So distribution-wise, what everybody is looking at, you can see it through, you see it on Steam. You see EA Origin. Everybody's looking at electronic distribution of their product. We talked about in episode 1 on how everybody is interested in online products and every product having an online component. So all of those things are sort of leading us down to a path of, hey, you're going to get more and more software over the wire in the future than you are going to at the store. And GameStop's they bought up a company that does digital distribution. They bought Congregate. They're trying to do other things to change their business model. Question is, will they do it fast enough to survive? But for the game player, getting it on the wire is much more likely to happen. The other part of that is, you notice that Gaikai got bought by Sony, and that's all about streaming to an endpoint device. So therein lies the second question, which is that hardware. So there's a few things that can happen on the hardware side. So console hardware generations sort of work like this, is you come out with a hardware console that you're selling at break even. If you're selling at $500, you're selling it at break even or at a small loss. And you're making your money up because everybody who writes software for your platform gives you some money. And that's in every year, 2 years, they drop the price and they get down to sort of that $99 price point. So you can still find PS2s in the market. You can still find the original Xbox in the market. They're trying to cover every price point people want to pay for a gaming console. So, that cycle is getting close to an end. The question is will it be next year we start hearing about the next generation of consoles, or will it be the year after? I doubt it'll be much more than that. It'll be interesting to see how well the Wii U does. But with hardware consoles, the battle they're fighting is to own your living room. So they want to be able to stream movies to you. They want to be able to sell you entertainment content over and above the games. And you see that on, Xbox and PlayStation all the time. Mm-hmm. That's how they're looking to make some more money. So do they need, high-end graphics chips for that? Or do they need, nice streaming hardware setups? Will they sell more of these devices if they can come in at a much lower price point, dumber piece of hardware, more stuff streamed across the wire or different graphic sets? That's going to be, the real question. My gut says both Microsoft and Sony are going to take one more shot at a console that's got real game hardware in it. The games will get better. If you look at, hardware is only part of the equation. The development tools are the other part. You look at Unreal 4, it does some mind-numbing things. It's going to lead to even cooler games, even bigger games. And, I think there's another hardware generation there before we get to the point where streaming is cost-effective.
Do you think that they'll use that if they do one more hardware generation, do you think that they'll use that generation to sort of ease and change the mindset of gamers of what the console does and get them, the average person very much used to the digital download and purchasing games online, and even when they're large, amounts of gigabytes and things like that?
Yeah, and in some ways that's starting to happen now. So if you think about, just mobile, we're just used to going to a store on our device, grabbing what we want. And so somebody who's going from mobile to, a console is going to find it bizarre that I have to leave my house, drive down the street, buy something, drive back to my house, install it, and then wait for the damn thing to download a patch. That's insane. So I think what the battle they really have to fight is, how do I get somebody who isn't primarily a game player to buy my device? So, people who play console games will buy the next console when it comes out. But the market, each of these companies has to expand that market. They want a piece of that revenue. And so Apple, Netflix, all of these guys are fighting over, streaming movies to the house and things like that. If Sony and Microsoft can grab something there, they've got a shot. And there's actually an opportunity for Sony, because it is a media empire, to not just offer up, a game console, but hey, look what we can do with movies, look what we can do with music. And that would be really interesting to see. Unfortunately, Sony historically has had divisions that constantly fight with each other. So, it'll be interesting to see what they do.
Do you think you mentioned about Sony purchasing Gaikai, which is a streaming cloud-based gaming? Do you think that we'll possibly see the Gaikai technology in the next PlayStation 4 or whatever they're going to call it?
Maybe. We talked in the last episode about you hit a point of scalability where costs sort of start to level off a little bit. And for Gaikai, and the trouble that OnLive is having, is right now the amount of hardware they need to do what they're doing is expensive to the point that it doesn't look like a viable business. Gaikai sold itself to Sony. That's a way of getting out from under a bunch of capital costs. OnLive declared bankruptcy, and that's revaluing your capital and saying, hey, we put $100 million in, and now it's worth $5 million. Now, if you're only carrying $5 million on your books, it's a little more profitable than if you're carrying $100 million on your books. So that sort of thing needs to happen. The question is one bankruptcy enough? Is one acquisition enough? If you remember back in 2000 or so, data centers were sort of a hot thing. And if I never have to go on a tour of another data center in my life, I'll be thrilled. But you'd have these great big data centers, and they tell you how they manage cables and their air conditioning and how many diesel generators they had out the back. Like, yeah, okay, I don't care. Anyway, these things, they built them. They were ridiculously expensive. And I did the math back then, and I said, there's no way this business is viable. And billions of dollars flowed into it. They went bankrupt. So Exodus, they went bankrupt. It got by Savas, that went bankrupt, got bought by Cable and Wireless, went bankrupt, got picked up by somebody else. So think about it. The capital got revalued on pennies per dollar. So what used to cost you $1 now is worth 10 cents, 5, 6 times in some of these cases. So that sort of cycle often happens when you see real technological change. And that on the streaming side might be exactly what we see is, Sony buys Gaikai and says, wow, this is really neat. There's no way we can roll this out globally, or maybe we can afford to roll this out in Asia where they have decent bandwidth. This would be great in Japan and Korea, but nowhere else in the world is this going to work because we need too much data center space. We need too many servers. We'll have to see what happens there, but my gut says there's probably another round of revaluing before that stuff is financially viable.
Do you think that any kind of cutting edge technology like that is going to be some of the most expensive business probably to be in the world when you're like doing stuff that's that cutting edge? Do you think that cloud gaming is the future, not just the digital distribution, that actually playing games from the cloud streaming to your setup? Is it definitely going to be completely 100% possible that all gamers are kind of on that system at some point in time?
Yeah, so, the debate there is what's the cost of the endpoint hardware? So if let's just say I'm playing on my home computer, well, a decent gaming rig's $1,000 and up. I'm willing to spend $1,000 and the game company is offloading the processing and the graphics to my $1,000. Once they get to the point where they can, densely pack servers that can run tens of thousands of, standalone machines kind of equivalent in a reasonable way, then their effort to get me to buy drops my $1,000 game computer to, a $20 on live terminal. So on live, if, folks haven't tried it and they're not dead yet, and, you should go and try them. If you have on live jacked into Ethernet and you're on you've got a good internet connection, it plays well enough for a middle-aged guy who doesn't have the twitch reflexes of a 15-year-old.
There's the pitch right there on live. If you got a good connection, it's perfect for you middle-aged, non-twitchy kids with bad reflexes. All right. It's super close. It
for $20, that beats the hell out of 400, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, there's certain games that I played on live that just they work fine. There's when you get into the Unreal Tournament kind of space, and it's really super twitchy, and there's latency there. Do you think that the technology is going to can it ever, like on the technological side, there's always got to be some sort of latency, right? So can they ever overcome that though at some point? Even so, the games like Unreal Tournament and stuff are just playing perfectly?
Yeah, I mean, light moves ridiculously fast, and that's what we're talking about, right? So right now, the light is moving between my hard drive, the memory on my computer, and my screen. Extending that out 10, 20, 50, 100 miles is a trivial amount of latency. The latency issue is actually more on what happens on the server and in the data center for that signal to actually get out to me. And then when you've got, mediocre internet as we do in the US, you're going to get more of that latency, more of those issues. But if you get a good, solid, clear day, you get ridiculously low latency, and it'll blow you away.
All right, next question. This one is from Elliot Mitchell. Elliot says, where do you see the greatest potential for an indie dev, mobile or Facebook?
That's a good question. So I think there's a couple of things going on. Let's talk about mobile for a second. Mobile, particularly iOS, but Android is getting much better, monetizes really well. People are willing to pay. The payment system is clear and obvious. Because of music and other things, people have been trained to buy it there. All of those things are really good. What's starting to happen, though, on mobile is discovery is becoming a problem. So if I put out a great game, how am I going to get you to see it? And that's hard. And so you get some breakout hits, but it's tricky, and that's something that people are struggling with. But you're starting to see a broader range of games coming out on iOS. You can find decent RPGs there. You can find some really good tactical strategic games. And, for me, Tower Defense, Field Runners 2, truly awesome, beautiful, very challenging. I'll spend a couple of months, exploring every nuance there. So I think there's real opportunity on the mobile side. Facebook, to me, the sense right now is the opportunity is ripe in Facebook, not for another Ville, but for something that really goes deeper than that. So, we talked before about the concept of mid-core games, something that isn't Farmville, it isn't poker, and it isn't Modern Warfare. Something in the middle that's going to take you, a 10 to 15 minute play session. It's going to be challenging. It's going to have
depth, a little bit more granular.
You got stuff blowing up, stuff guys like us is going to like. So those sorts of things, I think expanding in Facebook will be interesting. The negative on Facebook is some of the socialization. So somebody like me who does play a number of games, I also work with a lot of the people I know on Facebook, and I don't want to show up as playing games all the time there. So, there's times where I just want to be anonymous, and some of that, we'll see how that works out. But Facebook has stopped all the easy spamming of people, and so you have to build a much more rigorous environment.
So if you say for an indie developer out there like Elliot, would you say if they're at a crossroads where they feel like they need to sort of dedicate their time, they have the skills to develop on both, you would probably say to look, it sounds to me as if you're saying iOS would be your first route.
I would start with iOS. I'd probably build the game in Unity, which would give me an easy port to a browser or to Android. I'd also look at Windows 8 coming out on the mobile side. Actually had a chance this summer to play with one of Microsoft's prototype tablets. And it was a nice tablet. It was well put together. The OS is decent. And, the remarkable thing is BlackBerry's Playbook actually has really nice hardware, and the OS works quite well. But will there be content? So if you're an indie developer, if you're a struggling developer, putting your game out first in a platform that isn't very crowded gives you a chance to get a whole bunch of people using it. It gives you a chance to fix your game a little bit, to do that very important second and third rev of your game. And then, promote it even more heavily on a more crowded platform.
Yeah, games that were out there when iOS was in its infancy killed it, even especially when the iPad 1 hit the market. If you had an iPad app online the day the iPad 1 came out, you made boatloads of money because, I know I bought the iPad like the week it came out. The first thing you want to do is buy apps. And the first thing even the ones, and half of them I bought were purely just slapped together just to basically wow you. Like, oh my God, I could shoot at things and go like this with my iPad? That's awesome. Well, it's not such a great game, but still it used the accelerometer. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of people looking for. You touched on something that's very controversial, and I'll wait for somebody to actually ask the question, which I'm sure we will get now, is about Windows 8. I don't even want to open it up yet. I really want to know about that, though, but somebody sent that question in because there's a lot of controversy around Windows 8 in the gaming world right now.
Yeah, a bunch of whining.
Bunch of whining. Oh, it's good. I can now I'm intrigued. All right, let's move on.
We'll let the question come in, though.
Yes, we will. This one from Nguyen John. Nguyen says, with the release of the new Wii U imminent, with costs still being $300 to $400 plus, how does Nintendo plan on making a gain with the economy being a lot worse now when it was when the Wii was released years ago?
Yeah, so a couple of things. One is, let's just talk about the economy. Games actually are relatively recession-proof. They don't hurt. When we go into recession, game companies don't typically take a beating. So the cost of it, all of that, I don't think is going to be a big issue. Nintendo has done a poor job of translating what's unique and what's interesting about the Wii U to people at large. But from everything I'm hearing and some of the stock analysts that I read, they expect to actually sell out massively quickly. So if you want to make a little Christmas money, get in line, get a Wii U, resell it on eBay. But it'll move. The question is going to be, can they generate content? Will they have enough interesting content that's going to motivate people to spend that $400? So they have an opportunity where Sony and Microsoft have pushed off hardware refreshes, which means people are looking for something different. Wii U, is it that? It looks interesting. I haven't seen something that makes me want to run out and spend $400, but I think there's opportunity there.
All right, next question. This one is from Waffle Moore. Waffle says, Magic the Gathering has seen varying levels of success with its different digital games, and recently a game named Soulforge was funded on Kickstarter. With platforms like XBLA and the iPhone, why has this genre been slow to develop? Is it one you can see taking off, or is the collectible card game forever doomed to obscurity?
Well, I wouldn't say doomed to obscurity, but I think it is a relatively small niche. So a collectible card game has a lot of complexity to it. Once you get past, what's the thing before Pokemon? No, I don't remember. There was something my son played that was pre-Pokemon in terms of complexity. But in any of these collectible card games, to be any good at it, you really need to devote a lot. So the kind of people who are willing to spend that time and effort, that puts you into one category. And then collectible card games, those are the original free-to-play model. People, I remember when my son got into Magic, it was every flipping week. You're out and you're buying more packs for him, buying more packs. And out of the pack, 1 out of 10 had a card he wanted, and if anybody wants to buy a whole bunch of used Magic cards, got a deal for you. So, it's that sort of thing. It's not going to be an explosive genre, but I know enough game developers who love the genre, who are interested in it. They're going to keep innovating, and you're going to see different things, different plays. I've worked with the folks at Wizards of the Coast before. They've got a lot of ideas up their sleeve as to where they want to take Magic. So you're going to continue to see evolution here, but this isn't going to be the kind of thing that everybody's playing it. This is not going to be Skyrim.
Yeah, I think for the collectible, I was a Magic player as well back in the day, and I've still got tons of cards sitting in the garage as well. If anybody wants to buy those, we'll bundle them together. But I don't know if gamers. I don't think even kids growing up, though. I think people will always inherently have that collectible quality. There will be that subset of gamers who like collecting things and having things, and even if it's digital or if it's physical, whatever, it's just a matter of like when they strike fire again, right? Like Magic just completely struck fire with just the collectible card game, and countless other ones have come and gone, and just a lot of them didn't really have that sort of staying effect. Somebody will have that. It will come up again for sure.
Yeah, I think it'll be like board games or some of the other, kinds of games out there. It'll survive, but it'll be a niche genre.
All right, last up this week, this one written from Eric Lindner. Eric says, is Error 37, which if you guys didn't know was kind of a running thing with Diablo 3 being disconnecting from the servers there on Diablo launch night, they were getting Error 37. The question says, is Error 37 going to cost Blizzard substantial income on future titles? Moreover, why does this industry continue to put out unfinished, underpolished, and in some cases largely unplayable games and expect their fans, the paying customers, to mistake these shortcomings for quality products?
Yeah, so, I think if any fan out there thinks that Blizzard looked at Error 37 and said, meh, You're wrong. I'm sure from, the CEO level down, there was all sorts of yelling and screaming. I know the ops team and the network programmers worked long, hard hours to get rid of the problem. There are some problems that are very hard to predict, very hard to see, and they happen when you get slammed. And it's a cascade because of this piece of code interacting with that load balancer. When you've got these sorts of issues hitting you, they'll throw off these problems. So, what you'll see every release is they get better at various things. So the number of people that hit the Diablo 3 server, if they hit the WoW server on the day of launch, it would have gone down and stayed down. There just was no way back then we could have handled that sort of load. So we're getting better at it. We're figuring these sorts of things out. And, the players should realize that when something like this happens, internally, it's a nightmare. Everybody is ripping mad. They're trying to figure out solutions, and they work really hard to do that. I know at Vivox, we had absolutely fabulous uptime by industry standards. And even then, when something went down, we'd go nuts. The ops guys would have me on their back, the CEO on their back, VP of engineering sticking his head in, and everybody just sort of staring at them work to fix it. And then there'd be the postmortem of, hey, what happened? What do we do to fix that? How do we make sure this never happens again? And then how can we guess that this might, there's things we don't know. How do we find those things? So a lot of work goes into it, and, understand every time something like this happens, they go back and they try and deal with it.
And again, I mean, you look at just not long ago, with the Mists of Pandaria launch going, of course, there were some disconnects here and there. This is post Diablo. There were some disconnects here and there from people with the servers, but they actually took you didn't even have to log out to engage the expansion. So they put the technology in. So they're always reiterating. They're always trying to make this work. And I think that's something that it's hard for the end user to. They're not paid to worry about this stuff. The gamer out there just wants to play, and it's hard sometimes to kind of see through that when you're just trying to get in and you've just been waiting years of your life to play this game. But let's go to the second part of his question for a minute. And I'm not sure exactly which titles he's talking about. I'm assuming he's not talking about anything with Blizzard particularly, but I mean, it's hard to say. There's he's asking why the industry continues to put out unfinished, underpolished, and in some cases largely unplayable games. I mean, I think this also comes down to what games you're purchasing, because there is a subset of the market that are putting out mediocre games. There's middlecore games where companies there's a lot of companies that isn't that part of their business, is to actually put out
Yeah, just so we should.
I'm not talking about the AAA market. I'm not talking about the Blizzards and the Trions. I'm talking about this whole other tier of company.
Although you hear about it from some AAA companies, but we should do a longer look at how games are financed and what that means for the games themselves. But essentially, when you see a game that's come out and it's unfinished, it's because the amount of money they have to build the game is coming to an end. And so there isn't a game that's launched that you can't look at. And we used to say for years, every MMO we saw, gee, that's interesting, but boy, they could use another 6 months worth of polish. Sure, you can use another 6 months worth of polish. But if you're an American studio, your average man month is $12,000. So each person working on the game is $12,000 a month. Okay, so you got a team of 10. That's $120,000 a month. If you don't have a lot of money, at some point in time, you got to draw the line and say, we have to launch, and we have to make enough money to make an update to this. And that's that often is what you're seeing.
And that's something, and they're cutting it that close. Do you think most, even the big AAA MMOs, are coming down to the wire that close as well?
Oh, absolutely. So they've got a budget to build the game, and the development studio is working within that budget. And so the finances for, EA or Activision, they've told the market what they expect to make this year. And if a major game slips or if a major game doesn't get traction, that's going to hurt the stock price. That's going to cause the CEO to flip out and all of that stuff. So the studio is told, you've got this much time. Here's the window we're putting you in. Occasionally there's delays and you run into problems. And then the debate is, do we ship now because we have to hit this release target? Marketing has to ramp up months before you actually ship. So if you're 2 months away from your expected ship date and you're not ready, and that happens a lot less now than it used to a few years ago. But, you've just spent tons of money in marketing, and now where's the game? The game has to go. So what you're seeing is longer beta cycles in games, and so the marketing, the beta cycles overlap. And in the AAA titles and the larger studios, they do a better job of launching a quality product. But the studio's looking at it, and the way they're compensated in the studios, that's game has to launch and make money, and that's where our bonus is coming from. So they want it out the door. They want to make money at it.
What do you think about Tarab? What do you think about sort of what we're seeing some game companies are doing is that they're putting out the game, I'd say fairly early, and they're not even launching. I don't want to mention any titles, but they're not like officially launching. Happening in the free-to-play market especially, still calling it beta. Yeah. That's pretty much
like Minecraft beta. And
yeah. I mean, what do you think of that as sort of, is that kind of it's not more sound, but it's like a lot of companies I think are sort of taking the road of let's put it out, get it in the hands of users, and like you said, collect all that analytics, possibly start collecting some income early, turn that around, and we can really kind of carve out and create the game that the players actually want us to create. Do you think that that's a really viable games development cycle for the future?
I think it is for a select number of games. So if you're doing something that's really interesting or unique, something that's new, players will put up with I've got it and it's unfinished. Games I love, I don't play the beta of them. So I really want to play XCOM. I could get a beta key. I don't want a beta key because I want to enjoy that game. So if there's a game that's really interesting, it's different, it's not something I'm waiting for, but it's sort of caught my fancy, and it's relatively solid and playable, you're going to see some people doing it. As a general thing, I don't think it's something a lot of companies can really rely on. They need to put out a product and then update that product and improve on it. So they'll go out with version 1 and they'll keep iterating on it.
Monty Sharma, follow him on Twitter at Monster, MONTSTER 27. And if you have questions for Monty's Minute, be sure to send them to Monty at Gamebreaker.tv. Another excellent show. Great insight. Thanks so much, Monty. And of course, you can follow me at Gary Gannon on Twitter and follow Gamebreaker TV at Gamebreaker TV. And we do the show weekly. And send in your questions to Monty at Gamebreaker TV. We'll see you next week.